She stood at the other end of the alley, with a pair of long tailor's scissors hanging at her side. I couldn't see her face, just the mask. Then she took off half of the mask, looked straight at me, and asked,
"Am I beautiful?"
Most people would have noticed the scissors or the mask. I didn't. I noticed the stitches, because I was the one who put them there.
My name is Riku Kenji. For almost 30 years, I worked as a cosmetic surgeon in Tokyo. People trusted me with the one thing they couldn't hide: their faces. If someone wanted to look younger, I could do that. If they wanted a different nose, no problem. A new jawline, a different chin, smaller cheeks, that was just another Tuesday. The clinic made me wealthy. The legal surgeries paid well. The private ones paid even better. Now, before you start judging me, you should understand something. Tokyo has a world most people never see. Actors, politicians, yakuza, rich businessmen. People with money can buy almost anything, including a new identity. And surgeons like me, we don't ask questions. That's how we stay alive. About 6 years before everything happened, I got a call around midnight. No names, no paperwork, just an address. I almost said no. Then they told me how much they were paying. I changed my mind. The place wasn't a hospital. It wasn't even a clinic. An old basement that had been turned into a temporary operating room. 2 men waiting for me, both wearing suits. One of them slid a metal case across the table. Cash. More money than I'd normally make in a month. Then they brought her in. She was already unconscious. At first, I thought she'd been attacked by an animal. The injuries around her mouth were, I don't know. I've seen car crashes, industrial accidents, fire victims. But this was different. The cuts ran from both corners of her mouth almost to her ears. Whoever had done it knew exactly where to cut. It wasn't random. It was deliberate. One of the men looked at me and said, "You don't need to know what happened." I nodded, because I honestly didn't want to know. I just wanted to finish the job, collect my money, and leave. I finished the surgery just before sunrise. It took almost 5 hours. Whoever had cut her face hadn't just slashed at her. They'd been precise. The muscles around her mouth were still intact. Whoever did it wanted her alive. And that bothered me more than the injuries themselves. When I finished stitching everything together, one of the men checked my work like he actually knew what he was looking at. He nodded once, closed the metal case, and that was it. I never even learned the woman's name. For a while, I thought about reporting it. Then I remembered the amount of cash sitting in my apartment. I convinced myself it wasn't my problem. Eventually, I stopped thinking about her altogether. Or at least, I thought I had. 6 years passed. Business was better than ever. My clinic had moved to a larger building in Shinjuku. Most nights, I left around 11. That night, it was almost 2:30 in the morning. One of my surgeries had taken longer than expected. By the time I stepped outside, the streets were almost empty. Tokyo never really sleeps, but it does get quieter. I started walking toward the station. Halfway there, I remembered maintenance had closed the entrance. I had 2 choices: walk another 20 minutes or cut through one of the back alleys. I'd used that shortcut before, so I turned. The alley wasn't unusually dark. There were still lights. A few signs flickered overhead. Rainwater ran along the edge of the pavement. Everything looked normal, at least at first. About halfway through, I realized I couldn't hear the city anymore. No traffic, no train, no people talking. Nothing. It was strange, not because it was silent, because Tokyo is almost never silent. I stopped walking. That's when I noticed an umbrella lying upside down in the middle of the alley. It wasn't broken. It looked like someone had simply dropped it. A few steps later, I saw a white surgical mask. It was soaked from the rain. One of the strings moved slightly, not because of the wind, like someone had just let go of it. I looked behind me. The entrance to the alley suddenly felt much further away than I remembered. I actually laughed, quietly. I told myself, "You're exhausted. You've been operating for 14 hours. Go home." So I kept walking.
Then I heard footsteps. Not loud, not running, just slow, steady. They stopped when I stopped. I turned around. Nobody. I waited. Nothing. I started walking again. 3 steps. Behind me. 3 more. I turned again. Still nothing. That's when I noticed the water in the puddles behind me were moving, like someone was standing in them. Rain kept falling. Ripples spread across the water, but there was nobody there. Then, a woman's voice broke the silence. Soft, calm, close enough that she should have been standing right behind me. She said,
"Doctor?"
I spun around. A woman stepped out from beneath a broken neon sign. Long, dark hair, a beige trench coat, a white surgical mask covering the lower half of her face. One hand hanging by her side, the other holding something long, metal. She didn't rush toward me. She simply stood there, watching me. Then, very slowly, she hooked a finger under the edge of her mask and pulled it down, and asked the question everyone in Japan grows up hearing.
"Am I beautiful?"
For a second, I forgot about the scissors. I was looking at the faded stitches, the pattern, the spacing. Every surgeon develops habits they don't even realize they have. Mine always cross slightly at the corners before closing the final layer. It made the scar heal cleaner. I came up with it myself. I'd used that pattern for years, and now it was staring back at me. I heard myself whisper, "No." She tilted her head a little more, almost curious, like she was waiting for me to understand. I knew every inch of those scars, because I had closed them, years ago, in the basement. The 2 men in suits. The bag was full of cash. It all came back at once. I remembered asking if she was stable enough for surgery. One of the men looked at me and said, "Just make sure she survives." I never asked who she was, what they'd done to her, or why they couldn't take her to a hospital. I just kept operating. I took 1 step back, then another. She didn't move. She just watched me, still holding those long scissors. I reached into my pocket for my phone. No signal. Of course. I laughed once, not because anything was funny, because my brain was still trying to pretend this could be explained. I turned and hurried toward the entrance of the alley. It should have taken less than 30 seconds, but the alley just kept going. Yet somehow, I'd ended up exactly where I'd started. She was still standing there, waiting, almost patiently. She took one slow step toward me, then another. The scissor clicked together, like a surgeon testing an instrument before making the first cut. She stopped just a few feet away. Rain dripped from the ends of her hair. Then she asked again.
Am I beautiful?
We all hear the same stories. Say yes, and she'll slit open your mouth. Say no, and she'll kill you. Some people say you should distract her. But standing here, none of those stories mattered. Because this wasn't some random encounter. She wasn't asking a stranger. She was asking the man who had stitched her face together. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Finally, I said, "I'm sorry." She stared at me for a long time. Then she smiled. Or at least, as much as someone with a face like hers could. She stepped closer, close enough for me to smell disinfectant, the same smell that had filled that basement 6 years ago. I couldn't move. She leaned toward my ear. Her voice was almost gentle. "You did a beautiful job." Before I could answer, everything went black. When I woke up, I was lying under a surgical light, old, yellow, flickering. Metal trays surrounded me. Some were covered with rust, others looked recently cleaned. I couldn't move. My wrists were strapped down, and I was under anesthesia. I felt slight pain in my cheeks, lips. It felt heavy. Across the room, I saw them. 5 men, all wearing expensive suits, all sitting perfectly still. At first, I thought they were mannequins. Then I noticed their eyes. Every one of them was awake. Every one of them had the same impossibly wide smile. Their mouths had been stitched in the same manner as that woman. Not carelessly, professionally, with my technique. She stood beside me, picked up a needle, threaded it without looking, then placed the tip against the corner of my mouth. "You taught me," she whispered. "I've had years to practice." The last thing I heard was the sound of surgical thread being pulled tight.